The Witch Must Burn, Chapter 13. The morning of my departure, Glinda summoned me to her room as usual. She was always dressed in a low-cut pink dress that was fairly simple. For her, anyway. Her eyes had a dangerous glitter in them, and my heart sank. After all these weeks of relative calm, the real Glinda was back. She wasn't alone. The Scarecrow was there with her. His gangly frame was stuffed with his habitual too-small suit, and the clothes combined with his painted-on face, button eyes, and the bits of straw sticking out from under his hat should have made him look charming and harmless. But there was nothing harmless about the Scarecrow. "As you know, our dear friend has been helping me with a project that's very close to my heart," Glinda cooed. "And before I return you to Dorothy, he'd like to see all his work come to fruition. I hope you're aware of what a tremendous honor it is to be able to ask to help him." "Me?" I asked uncertainly, and Glinda laughed. "My dear Jellia," she burbled merrily, "don't you think I've forgotten how eager you were to your duty for Oz, do you? We've been working non-stop all week to perfect the machine I designed that will siphon Oz's leftover magic to where it's needed most." My eyes widened in terror, and I took an involuntary step backward. "I thought the machine didn't work, Your Eminence," I whispered, her brow furrowed with displeasure. "Jellia, that skeptical attitude is simply hateful, and I won't tolerate it. Of course my machine works. It simply needed some adjustments." She smiled at the Scarecrow. "Now, are you ready?" Before I could open my mouth to answer, everything went blurry, and I felt as though I'd been pulled through a tub of molasses while trying to cross a stormy sea on a rowboat. When the world solidified around me again, Glinda, the Scarecrow, and I had been transported to a meadow of pale yellow grass, dotted here and there with bright red flowers that grew more thickly in the meadow's center. The air had the faint, Oz-y crackle of magic. A handful of Munchkins were busy setting up what I recognized with a sinking heart as a simpler and more compact version of the mechanical apparatus she used on me in the journey to her palace. "You know what they say, Jellia," Glinda said, smiling at my stricken impression. "At first you don't succeed. Try again." She seized my arm and dragged me, struggling toward the machine, the Scarecrow following after us. "You should be very honored, Jellia," Glinda added. "Even though he's terribly busy, the Scarecrow agreed to come out and help me make a few adjustments to my magical drill. Isn't that generous of him? He knows how important the well-being of Oz is, and how much the magic will help keep Oz the wonderful place it is." As Glinda dragged me closer to the Scarecrow turned to look at us, his awful button eyes glinting as he examined me like I was one of his science experiments. "This is the fairy?" he grated. "Only part," Glinda said, "but she'll have to do." My mind reeled. Part fairy? Me? But that was impossible. "It may not be enough. I've already told you Munchkin labor is insufficient," Glinda interrupted sharply. "Perhaps, but it may be the only way to operate the machine." "I didn't bring you all the way out here to give me excuses," Glinda said brightly. "There's no excuse for this negativity when it comes to serving Oz." The Scarecrow shrugged. "I made the adjustments you specified, but I haven't had enough time to experiment. Another few weeks in my laboratory, and I might have something for you, but I can't guarantee this machine will work." "We don't have another few weeks. Dorothy wants this girl back now," Glinda said, shoving me forward into the Scarecrow's arms. "And we wouldn't want to disobey the illustrious ruler of Oz, would we?" start the machine. His fingers closed around my arms, and I shuddered with revulsion. It was almost impossible to believe this monster was the same lovable buffoon who'd once, briefly, governed Oz before Ozma took the right place under the throne. His fingers dug into my flesh, and he strapped me into a smaller, more compact version of the platform Glinda had harnessed me into before, and fastened a metal collar around my neck. The metal pieces curved upward from the collar and ended in rods, and he inserted in my eardrums. I couldn't move my head without impaling myself, so I gave up struggling and held myself as still as possible. His eerie, dead eyes didn't even register me as he walked. He tightened the grip that crossed my chest and stepped away from me. "It's ready," he said to Glinda, and she smiled. "Let's begin, Jellia," she said sweetly. "Try not to let me down this time, my dear." I braced myself, but there was no preparing for the agony that followed. Excruciating waves tore through me, each one worse than the last. The metal pieces in my ears were like red-hot pokers driving into my brain. Glenda and the Scarecrow watched dispassionately as I sobbed in despair. "She's too weak," I heard the Scarecrow say as my vision began to go dark. "I told you it's not going to work." "Then both of you are terrible disappointments," Glinda said coldly. "And I'm done wasting my time here. If she survives, the Munchkins can take her back to Dorothy. I have no use for her." The pain overwhelmed me, and then I didn't feel anything at all.